podcast. We have a lot to talk about today. Not a lot of positives, but it's part of it. Anthony, just going to be brutally honest. Saturday was as disappointing a loss as I can remember. I know a lot of the fans feel the same way. And really, it was a blindsided 21-point defeat. I know you and I were of the opinion that Carolina would win and win rather easily. And I don't know if the team thought that or what, but clearly nobody saw us getting run out of our own gym at home Saturday afternoon in the Smith Center.
Yeah, no, I'm with you, man. It's just I'm just kind of sitting here, even still right now. It's been over a day since it happened, and honestly, I can't tell you what changed within the time period of 4 days. I don't understand how they went from that team that we saw against State in a road environment that played so well for, the most part of the second half, took care of the basketball, and, started to finally look like maybe the team that we thought they could possibly be. And then all of a sudden at home, as you mentioned, against Louisville, all of a sudden they came out and just, from the word go, never really looked like they could get their feet underneath them. It was a sluggish start, and they never really recovered. And, one of the things that was brought up at the halftime, of the game during the halftime report for ESPN, LaFonso Ellis said, this is something that you typically can see with some of these rivalry matchups. And I know people are going to say, well, this is, or we don't have a rivalry against State. Quit saying that. Let's be real honest. They are our rival, and those types of games you get hyped up for. And usually the game after that is not really that easy, especially when you went 40 minutes with the State team that is better than they've been in the past. And, I think we put a lot of effort into that game, and then having to turn around and play Saturday, I know it's not really, it's a decent layoff, gives them enough time to recover, and I thought the same thing. But, that was the thing. And really, one of the major things was, I thought, when you got off to the sluggish start and, you were down as much as you were early on, the key was going to be able to, was being able to string defensive stops along with good offensive possessions together. And that never really seemed to happen. Anytime that they would start scoring on the offensive end, they wouldn't be able to get a stop on the defensive end. And then when they were able to get stops on the defensive end, they weren't able to convert on the offensive end. And that really just, conversely led to not being able to put together a run, which you kind of have to do in really any basketball game if you're trailing for sure. So, I think when you look back at this game, it's just one of those games where you're kind of left scratching your head saying, how did we get beat by 21 at home to a Louisville team that really isn't that bad? We were discussing it before the podcast. They aren't really as bad as maybe some people would think with the record that they have at this point in the season, but really, isn't a team that we felt was up to our standards.
Yeah, I can tell you how you lose by 21 at home. You shoot 34% from the field, 14% from three, and you get out rebounded by 9. That's a good recipe for getting your ass kicked. I understand the layoff and then the emotional, toll after playing 40 minutes of high intensity at NC State and then trying to get back to that level. It's hard. We've seen this team struggle with back-to-back years because the ACC has scheduled them with a Duke game and then after that with a trip to State, which I'm not going to complain because it's not my, and I don't want to come across as a whiner. That's not really fair because you're a team that hates you as much as Duke. It's hard to really get up for those kind of games. But I also think what happened Saturday is one of those days in basketball that you just have. And I think the reason why everyone's upset and we're all been out of shape is that it happened at home. If we would have had this kind of performance on the road, we would have been like, this is our one clunker on the road we have every single year.
Right.
I mean, we had one in 2016 when we made the national title game. We had one in 2017 when we won the national championship. But they were road games. It never happened in the Smith Center. And I guess that's the most disappointing thing. And you're right. We came out sluggish, and maybe the noon tip was part of it. And really, the crowd never got a chance to get to have any effect on the game. And, you know, it was just an uphill battle all day long. I thought Louisville just did a really good job. They took us out of transition, and they defended at a really high level in the half court. And Carolina really, really struggled defending Louisville inside because they're a little bit bigger.
Yep.
And their guards just had one of those days from three that a team likes to have against Carolina every year.
Well, I mean, here's the other thing that I think people have to make sure they understand about this game. Look, Carolina did not play well. I think we all know that. They really, I mean, they struggled on the defensive end pretty much everywhere. They weren't good defending the middle of the paint, and that was what allowed them to do as much damage as they did inside with Enoch and then outside with their three-point shooters. You know, but at the same time, look, I thought Louisville just played fantastic. And sometimes there are those games where the other team really just plays that well. And when you combine that with the fact that you played arguably your worst offensive game of the season, maybe outside of Michigan, I mean, that things like this are going to happen. So, I mean, I don't think it's the end of the year. Like some of these people do, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. But, you know, I mean, trust me, there's always going to be things that you can improve on. But, you know, look, Louisville had a great game. This team, you know, you're going to have those games, like you said, where you don't shoot the basketball well. We've seen that year in and year out. It's just, it's become just a matter of when. But like you said, usually it's on the road. We've seen those games, you know, a few years ago against Miami getting blown out. We've seen it against Georgia Tech, you know, a few years ago as well. So, you know, you would expect it on the road, but this time it came at home. That's the key now. Don't let one of these games show up on the road. Yeah, it's terrible that they had to lose the way they did at home, you know, lose by 21, which is the biggest margin, you know, of victory for an opposing team in the Smith Center under Roy Williams, which is extremely impressive, continues to show how great of a coach Roy Williams is. But, you know, I think, you know, if they can get some things fixed on the defensive end, and I still feel like this team has what it takes to be able to adjust themselves defensively. I don't think that this game is going to necessarily define them for the rest of the season. You know, I think that this can still be a team that can get to that second weekend of the tournament, and I think can still cause some problems for teams if they're not careful. And I mean, look, you know, I think it's like you said, maybe we underestimated Louisville a little bit. We got to realize we cannot do that throughout the rest of ACC play, or games like this are going to keep happening because every team in the ACC this year, I think maybe outside of Wake Forest or Miami, they are going to give you their best shot, including that Notre Dame team that we're about to play on Tuesday night. Because look, you know, again, another team that's record may not look great, but if we're being really honest, they're an ACC team that at this point, I don't think anybody would be shocked if they ended up in the NCAA tournament. So the key is, don't overlook opponents anymore. You got to be ready for whoever is coming into your building or whoever you're going on the road to play, or else games like this are going to keep happening.
Yeah, I mean, this is another example. You know, I know the national media has touted the Big 12 and the Big 10 as being better and deeper conferences, but you'd be hard pressed to find a team like, if we're being honest, we don't know where Louisville's going to shake out. But if we're going off the top of our head, they're probably the 7th or 8th best team in the conference, and they just went on the road and won by 21 against a team that you would probably figure to be a top 3 and competing to win a regular season title.
Right.
I don't see, you know, a TCU from the Big 12 going into Kansas and blowing them out, or a Nebraska from the Big Ten going into a Michigan State, Indiana, and blowing them out. Like, it's just not going to happen. And this is just why it's really hard in this league to win every, that's why what Virginia did last year was so impressive, going 17-1, because every night you got to be ready, because every team in this league is capable. And we had to take this one on the chin at home. The good news is normally when these kind of things happen, these teams respond well under Roy Williams. I would like to think the players were embarrassed by their performance. More importantly, they were humbled, because coming out of the state game, all the national media pundits were starting to come back. Well, did we overlook Carolina? Are they about to go on a run? I told you they should have been undefeated going into the January 21st game with Virginia Tech, which could have figured to have been a top 10 matchup.
Right.
So even maybe I estimated this Carolina team to that degree.
Mm-hmm.
But, we're not going to spend too much time on this, because there's really not a whole lot to talk about other than the fact that we got our ass kicked. And you know what? Sometimes in sports that happens. I know people are mad and upset, and now this team, NIT bound and all of this. But if we come out Tuesday night and we play the way we're capable of playing, and we beat a decent Notre Dame team like we're expected to, then at least in my mind, the Louisville game will be over. I won't be sitting here on Wednesday thinking about, well, God, I wish we had that Louisville game back. Because, look, we have a return game to them in about 3 to 4 weeks. So we have a chance to go into their building and do the exact same thing.
Yeah, no, I mean, if we're I guess quickly, just some of the things that maybe kind of stood out as to, more of the reasons why we struggled. I mean, -8 on the glass. We've seen this a few times with Carolina, where, if they get beat on the glass, that's pretty much the ball game. Plain and simple. That's how we thrive, is, by rebounding well and getting out in transition. And that did not happen in this game against Louisville. It didn't help that they shot the ball well, but it didn't help that they were cleaning up the glass as well as they did. The top rebounder was Luke May, and then after him, with 11 rebounds, Nazir Little was the second leading rebounder on the day with 4. That's mind-blowing, how we were not able to have even really a stretch of the game where we were dominant on the glass, because we've seen it at all times from this team. And I thought, one of the most crucial points of the game really was the start of the second half. And, we came out, got a couple of quick baskets, and cut the lead down to 8, but that was the closest we ever got. And after that, Louisville went on another run where they were able to stretch the lead back out to about 15, and then from then on, that was pretty much the margin the rest of the game until they got it, stretched out even a little further towards the end of the game. So I thought, that was the key area. And, you're not going to have a great day when, the guys that you're relying on to shoot the basketball well didn't shoot well. Kobe White, 0 of 4 from the field. Cam Johnson, just 3 of 8. And worst of all, Luke May, 3 of 14. That, to me, was probably his worst offensive game of the season. He had plenty of shots inside that should have been easy finishes at the basket and just couldn't get anything to go down. But, at the same time, look, it's a bad day, and I'm with you. This game is not going to be what defines this team. I would be extremely shocked if we saw them play as bad or worse than this the rest of the year. I don't think that's even possible. This is the worst game that I've seen them play, dude, in a long time. I would say probably since the Duke game in 2010. They played that bad to where you never felt that they really had a chance to come back in the game because they couldn't do anything consistently. So I think they'll rebound, and they'll bounce back. But, this is a game, like you said, that, there are a lot of factors that, point to why they lost. But it's one that you just got to kind of forget and say, look, it's one of those games that we don't really even want to look back on. You just kind of want to put it in the past and move on. So hopefully they'll end up doing that.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of those, we always like to say, bury the tape and just move on. I'm sure that didn't happen because the way that Roy Williamson of after the game, he was really ticked off at the team. And I guess the thing I was the most disappointed in as a fan and as a follower of the program was just the lack of fight, because this program's been known since Dean Smith really took over that, they're going to have some run in them, whether it's an 8-0 run, a 10-0 run, a 12-2 run.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to have some spurt. And they had nothing the other day, which is, and look, a lot of that is you got to credit Louisville because they didn't let Carolina run, and that is as hard a thing to do in when you play us because we're so good at doing it. But that was just the most disappointing thing to me, was just the lack of fight and the lack of effort that we gave. And I'd be hard pressed to see us play that lackadaisical again, because if not, I mean, if we do that again, there's a good chance the Blue Squad might come in, because Roy's not going to put up with that, especially on his home floor again. So we're going to go ahead and move to Notre Dame. But I don't want to spend too much time on just being negative.
Well, I wanted to bring this up because I got a question on this earlier, and I also was tagged in a tweet yesterday talking about another thing that I'd like to discuss really quickly, if that's cool. I mean, you had one of the guys, his name's Rob Guy 3 on Twitter. He was tweeting yesterday after the game and really said that, he thinks that one of the big things with this team is really the lack of leadership. And I think what he means by that, because I think there are leaders on this team. I think Cam Johnson is a leader. I think that, for the most part, Luke May is a leader. But I think really what he means is the lack of a vocal leader on this team this year. We were talking about it a little bit back and forth, and I think he does bring up a valid point. I mean, do you think he's on to something with this?
I do think the team is missing that guy that when you mess up, whether you miss a rotation or you didn't communicate or something like that, that guy's not telling you, hey, you screwed up, but you're going to be okay. And a lot of times that guy in basketball is your point guard.
Right.
And we had 2 years of that with Joel Berry, and then really before that, 4 straight years of that with Marcus Page. And so everyone's looking at Kobe White because he's the starting point guard to be that kind of guy. And whether it, I don't think to me, that's just not who Kobe is. I think he's just a quiet guy. I do think Luke and Cam and Kenny need to be a little bit more vocal, and I think Saturday was a good time for Roy Williams to point that out and be like, hey, you're seniors. A lot of y'all came back because you didn't like the way the season ended last year. I need you to be better as a player and as a leader, because you're the most experienced players and the best players we have, so we need you to up your level. And so I do think you're going to see an uptick in the leadership from the guys, just because not many freshmen are born to lead a team.
Right.
It's very rare. And so I'm not going to sit here and blast Kobe. But we knew coming into the year we were losing Joel Berry and losing Theo Pinson. As much as the production was going to hurt missing, we knew losing their leadership was going to hurt us more than that.
Yeah, I mean, you can, of course, argue that, losing Theo Pinson and his defensive effort on the other end of the floor was going to be huge. But, yeah, no, I agree. I think, without Joel Berry there, that was your guy on the floor that pretty much was Roy. And that's always one of the big things that Roy, I think, looks for out of his point guards, especially, is that, look, it doesn't really matter what your star rating is. I don't care how talented you are. Can you be that leader on the floor? And you might say, well, look at Kobe White. He really hasn't been that leader so far. He's a freshman. That's hard to go out there amongst a veteran group of guys that they have out there. I mean, granted, Garrison Brooks is only a sophomore, but again, he was there last year. You're the youngest guy out there on the floor, and you're trying to tell these guys and direct these guys on what to do. I just, and I'm kind of like you. I don't know if that's really what Kobe is. I don't know if he's really that vocal guy, like some of the point guards that we've seen in the past. But I think, he could end up potentially becoming that guy, because I didn't think early on in his career that Marcus Page was really that guy. And I think he sort of developed as the years went on into that sort of voice on the floor. So I agree it's going to take some time. And they've got to find someone else out there. To me, the guy that would stand out the most, because I don't think that Luke May is that guy. Luke May has never been that vocal guy. He's kind of been that quiet, hardworking guy that just gets out there, gets in the post, and does what he has to do. Usually will get you a double-double on, most nights. Cam Johnson, again, another guy that, I think because he was a transfer as well, doesn't feel like he's quite that guy that should be saying something. I think he might need to become a little more vocal, but again, kind of a quiet guy that just kind of goes about what he does, similar to Justin Jackson. See, I think the guy that has to step up is Kenny Williams, because he seems like that defensive leader. He's a guy that when he starts hitting his shots, he will, let people know a little bit. And, I feel like he has a little bit of credibility to say something, especially because of how good of a defender he's been over the last few seasons. Now, granted, he's not having his best defensive year so far this year, but at the same time, your guards usually are your leaders. And so if Kobe White can't be that leader, I think he's the guy that has to step up. I mean, is that the guy that you would say maybe has to become that vocal leader, or is there maybe someone else?
Yeah, I mean, I thought going into the year he would be a little bit more vocal and all that, but Kenny's one of those guys that leads with his effort and his play. And while he's done the things that Kenny Williams does, diving on the floor, diving in the stands, taking charges, at some point, if that's not getting across, there's nothing wrong with you getting on a teammate.
Right.
It's all out of love and all up from a competitive spirit. Look, we're trying to win games. If you mess up, someone other than the head coach and the assistant coaches need to hold you accountable. The other four guys on the floor need to hold you accountable. And so hopefully we see a shift in that, because if not, I mean, I don't think that the team's in trouble. It's just we might not get where we aspire to get to if someone doesn't take charge and start leading this team with their voice. So, but yeah, I would definitely agree he'd be the one guy, just because it's not who Luke May is. And Cam, as a transfer, probably doesn't feel he has the most credibility.
Right.
Even though he's been our best player on offense the whole season.
Yeah, I agree with that. And then one of the other questions that I got was from Elijah Schreiner on Twitter, and he said, we've switched from the big man role to live and die by the three, which I disagree with. I don't think that's. I think it's more we live and die by jump shooting. I wouldn't say it's by the 3-pointer, but he said that you can desperately see that UNC needs a big man. He says we don't have a true center at this point. Do you agree with that notion, or do you believe in either Sterling Manley or Garrison Brooks being our center?
Totally disagree with that. I think Garrison Brooks has done I'm not going to say fantastic. He's done a really good job this year. He's the best defender we have when we get in ball screen situations. Whether that's saying a whole lot or not, I don't know, but he is our best defender in that he rotates as good as anybody. He's an improved rebounder, especially attacking the offensive glass. And he's proven that there are some times he can, if he gets enough position on the post, he can get his own bucket. I still think in the long run, if Sterling Manley ever gets it and the light bulb comes on, the guys are walking double waiting to happen. It's just a matter of him getting the motor and getting the want to really play this game at a high level. And for everyone that's complaining about we don't have a high-quality big man, we got one coming in next year that's as probably as good as big man as we've had coming out of high school since the Zeller and Henson days. The Armando, we're going to pronounce his name, Bacat.
Yep.
Is as legit as a big man as Roy has recruited as a high school player in almost a decade. So maybe he's the answer, but I'm fine with what Garrison's given this team, and I still think at some point there's too much there, too much potential for Sterling, because if there wasn't potential there, Roy Williams wouldn't have given him a scholarship. So I completely disagree with his opinion, like always.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know where I'm at really on this. I don't think that Garrison Brooks is the typical big man that Roy Williams has. I do think at times he looks like he is a little undersized against some of the bigger teams. And, I mean, that's probably a fair assessment. But at the same time, I'm kind of with you. I think he's elevated his play. I think that for the most part, I'd agree with you. He's probably been our best defender so far this year. I think, him and Kenny Williams, I think, are still probably the top two guys out there. But, at the same time, I think Bacat will be the solution when he gets there. I've seen some of his highlight tape, and this kid is legit and can score the basketball inside, which is something that, the best Carolina teams have always had, is a guy that can score the basketball inside. I think really, again, I think what everybody thinks is they lack a true center, when it's really that they lack a true Roy Williams type center. And the problem is that guy left in, 2000, after the 2016 season was when Tony Bradley left?
The 17 title team.
17 title team, that's right. 16, 17, that's right. So he, of course, with him leaving, that was pretty much, in my opinion, where Roy was thinking they would go in the future at center. Because, you had Luke May, you felt like, okay, he could probably get the job done at power forward or out of that 4 spot. And then we're going to have a guy in Tony Bradley who was, 7 foot or maybe 6'11", but I believe they listed him at 7 foot. That's a typical Roy Williams big man. And, he kind of shocked everyone. And this is what I say. And some people say, this is Roy's fault for letting him walk out. Meanwhile, these are the same morons that say that we need to end up bringing in these one and dones in order to compete at the level of a Duke or Kentucky or, what was the other example I got the other day? Oh, Virginia, even though they don't bring in one and dones. But, that's beyond the point, I guess. But I think, look, if he was there, I think it would be we would not be talking about this right now, because he would be that true big man that could score the basketball inside, play. I thought Tony Bradley, for the most part, when we saw him, was a willing defender. Again, he was a freshman, so I don't think he was that great of a defender. But at the same time, I think having Garrison Brooks then come off the bench would be, a nice addition. And then you would have Sterling Manley as that 3 guy, or, that third center. Or you could even put him in at the 5, move Garrison to the 4, and, have those big lineups, back to back. I just think, if they had Tony Bradley, it'd be so much different. And, with Bacat coming in, I think that could potentially be what changes this. But I don't 100% agree with his notion, but I get where he's trying to go. It's not that we don't have a true center, though. I think it's that we don't have a Roy Williams true center. So, Yeah, no, those were the two questions I got. I mean, interesting ones for sure. So, I think that'll be. Yeah, that'll be something I guess we can kind of talk about as we go throughout the season, though, and into the off season for sure. So I think we want to move on to Notre Dame, right?
Yeah, we're going to go in and preview the game against the Irish. This is a typical Mike Bray Notre Dame team. They are a really good team that, they understand how to play at the pace they want to play. They're not Virginia where they really slow it down, but this is a team that is selective in transition, and if it's not there, they'll pull it out and they'll run good offense. We know they're going to space the floor with a little bit more of a smaller lineup and make us kind of guard with our bigger lineup. They are struggling, or they were struggling with the injury once they lost Rex Pfluger for the season. Just a terrible injury for that young man. Season's over, and I believe his college basketball's career is over, and I hate that for him. But they come in with a win on Saturday against Boston College, only by 3 points at home. They sit 1-2 in ACC play, having lost at Virginia Tech and home to Syracuse. So this team is still, I guess they're still growing. They're not a finished product because this team is always a team that gets better the later the season goes. And by March, they're one of those teams in the ACC that you really don't want to play when you're trying to compete for a conference regular season title. And then, of course, the ACC tournament, they've been phenomenal since joining the ACC. TJ Gibbs leads them in scoring at about 15 a game, but only shoots it 36% from the field, so he scores well, but he's not efficient. And he's also their leading assist man at about 4 a game. And then their leading rebounder is John Mooney, who averages just a little under 10. So it would be a nice matchup with him and Luke May inside Tuesday night in the Smith Center.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned it, a team that really so far in ACC play has struggled. They had to hold off a comeback attempt the other night against Boston College, who, let's be real honest. I mean, they're kind of an up and down team, and we don't really know who they are, but they're not really they're not a team that you should be struggling with, and a team that you would expect Notre Dame teams of the past to handle relatively easily. I'm kind of with you. I think this is a team that will probably get better as the season goes along. We know TJ Gibbs is a guy that can fill it up, but like you said, I mean, he's a volume scorer, plain and simple. He's going to have to take a lot of shots to get his points. So, that's one of the things that Carolina is going to like is that, look, they don't really have that many efficient shooters. Their most efficient shooter is John Mooney, who shoots it at about 53.8%. Now, the thing about Mooney is, and we remember him from last year, he's a classic Notre Dame big guy, a guy that likes to get down in the post and scrap for rebounds, and, he gets those dirty points. So Carolina's going to have to be efficient on the glass. They're going to have to get down there, and they're going to have to play a lot better than they played the other day against Stephen Enoch, a guy who really hadn't played all that well up until that point of the season. So Mooney comes in playing some consistently good basketball. It's going to be on Luke May and Garrison Brooks really to be able to control the game inside and rebound well. If they can do that, look, Mooney is a guy that, he's their only rebounder, really. I mean, looking at the rest of their roster, they don't have another guy over 5 rebounds a game. So that's the area where I think Carolina has to be able to control it. We talked about that the other day when we were previewing the Louisville game, and simply that didn't happen. They got to know that coming into this game, look, you've got to get every loose ball that is out there possible. And turn that into offense. You've got to be able to get out and run against this team. And that's something that I think, it's going to be there. So if they can take advantage of that and have a better defensive performance, take care of the basketball, something they haven't done in the last 2 games, then I think that they can come back and bounce back with a win. And again, it's at home. It's in the Smith Center. And don't think that, because they lost the game to Louisville, all of a sudden the Smith Center will now be a struggle to win games in. No, it's not going to become that. Carolina has always played well at home in the Smith Center, and a loss like that isn't going to change that. So, I would expect that Carolina will come out. They said it the other day on the broadcast. Dan Schulman said it. He's probably, Mike Bray is probably thinking, why did they have to lose this game? Because this team is going to come out pissed off, and they have got to come out with that attitude and show that, look, yeah, that game was terrible. That's the worst game that we played in a long time, but we put that behind us, and we're ready for the rest of an ACC schedule that we know is not going to be easy.
Yeah, I think a lot of emphasis would have been in practice post the Louisville game, and a lot of the stuff they looked at on film is pushing the ball, even if, because Notre Dame's going to look at the Louisville film and try to do what they did to take us out of the open floor. So I think you're going to see this team try to run the floor a little bit harder. Whether it's Kobe or whether it's the guys running with Kobe, getting down the floor a little bit. It'll be hard pressed for me to think that they'll shoot the ball as bad as they shot it the other day.
Right.
And I really think this will be one of those statement kind of games from Carolina, because there's all the pressure is going to be on them because Notre Dame's on the road and they didn't get their ass kicked their last time out like Carolina did. But normally in these kind of games, when we start, when the doubt starts creeping in and we wonder about the team and then the coaching, they respond in a really big way. And that's what I think is going to happen on Tuesday. I think Carolina's going to play as good as the game they've played in ACC play. I think we're going to shoot it the way we expect to. I think they're going to continue to grow defensively. We got to understand, this team entering the Louisville game, I haven't checked it since, was 10th in KenPom in defensive efficiency. So as much as we've complained about the defense, efficient-wise, they're top 10 in the country. Now, that might have dropped, or it might have been, based on Saturday's effort, but
right.
That's not what to complain about, and this is still where they can still get better. And so I'm seeing a pretty solid, I'm not going to say a dominant win just because it's Notre Dame. We don't dominate them because they're so good at really slowing the game down and spacing the floor, and it makes it hard to defend. But I do see Carolina bouncing back, getting that first home win in ACC play. And I think the guy that's going to have the big game is, I think Luke May responds in a big way, because he's one of those guys, when he plays bad one night, the next time out, he plays like the All-American type of player, an All-ACC player he can and will be. And I think Tuesday night, he's going to dominate.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you. I think it'll be a little bit closer maybe than you're thinking. I think probably in the single digits, but really a game that I feel like Carolina will control for the most part. Might have some struggles early on in the game. We've seen that a few times, and it is a 9 p.m. tip, so a later tip, usually when they have to wait later into the day, they do struggle a little bit. But I think, you know what, they'll be able to take over the game the way they want to, as we go into the second half. And I think really get at least a comfortable enough lead to be able to, maybe get some of these guys that are, looking for time off the bench into the game. One of the keys will be staying out of foul trouble, something that we've had a little bit of trouble doing over the last few games. But if they can do that, I think, they get a comfortable win at home. And, the guy that I think bounces back, I'm along the lines that you are with a guy that bounces back after a bad performance, but I'm going to go Cam Johnson. There's never usually been back-to-back bad performances from Cam Johnson, especially in his time with Carolina. I think he knows that he didn't play a great game the other day, and he is not happy about the fact that he didn't play a great game the other day. I think he responds with a nice performance at home against Notre Dame, and I think you're right. Pick up that first win and go to 3-1 in the ACC, which, believe it or not, is actually not that bad.
Yeah, it's kind of, you look at it, you go 3-1 every 4 games, you're going to be in the 12-6, 13-5 range by the
Right.
time conference play ends, which is, we figure even though Duke and Virginia look on a different level right now, we understand this is a gauntlet. It's not a sprint, it's a marathon. And if you have that kind of record, you're going to be competing for a regular season championship, which is what we ask and what we expect. So, I'm with you. Just win, get the Louisville game behind us, and we can finally, just move on with our season and really get back to playing Carolina basketball and have the feeling we had before the Louisville game that, look, yeah, we are really doggone good and we're going to cause problems in the ACC. So is there anything else you want to talk about tonight in this edition of the Roy's Boys podcast? Are you ready to shut this one down?
Well, I mean, I know we maybe wanted to have a little conversation about the fact that the fan base just continues to go nuts after these losses. I mean, I've seen plenty of people complaining that maybe Roy has lost it. This team just doesn't seem to, live up to our expectations. Season's over after a loss to a Louisville team that really, I think people just kind of look at the record and assume that this team is not good at all. And really, that's just, frankly, not the truth. I mean, I don't get it. I don't understand why people keep doing this every year and overreacting whenever we lose games like this. We've been here and done this before in the ACC. This happens, like we mentioned earlier, once a year, it seems, and usually it happens on the road. This year, it seems like it's happened at home. And we've had some struggles usually early on in conference play. That's always usually been a thing under Roy Williams, and then we usually get things turned back in the right direction. But I had countless people that told me that Roy Williams is not a good recruiter. He's fallen off, which is a false narrative. He has recruited well really throughout the entirety of his time at Carolina. I think he's only had one season where he's ranked outside of the top 20 in recruiting. And again, people say, well, that doesn't live up to our expectations. I don't really think it matters what the star ratings are on these guys, because we've had guys that have been, according to recruiting outlets, guys that really weren't supposed to be that successful turn into successful basketball players. Again, recruiting in basketball is a lot different than in football. You don't have the volume of players that you recruit year in and year out as football does, where you can continually have great class after great class. And to me, I don't know if it's a problem from most realistic Tar Heel fans' perspectives. I don't see recruiting as a problem right now. I mean, just look at this year's class. We landed 2 5-stars, and those are 2 of 20 that Roy has landed in his time at Carolina, which is impressive in my opinion enough. But it's like I said the other day, it's impressive for any coach to recruit that many, but it must be really impressive for a coach that apparently sucks at recruiting. So, I just don't understand why people all of a sudden, whenever we lose a game like this, want to overreact and say, look, Roy Williams is not this great coach. He continually gets outcoached. That was another one that I saw. Continually gets outcoached. He literally almost passed out on the sidelines the other day because he was doing what? Coaching the entire time he was out there. So shut the hell up on that. That's the dumbest crap I have ever heard in my life. Roy Williams is one of the only coaches that I've seen that is consistently standing up and vocally coaching throughout the entirety of the game. Most other coaches do not do that. Coach K doesn't do that. Coach K barely stands up and says anything during a game. And this is not anything directed towards Coach K. That's the way that he's coached, and clearly he knows what he's doing because his teams have been as successful as they have been. But Coach Williams is one of the most adamant coaches that I've seen on the sidelines in any sport. So that notion that he doesn't coach and is consistently getting out coached is dumbass. Plain and simple. There is no other way to describe it. that is a dumbass statement. And, you know, everybody seems to want to say about certain players. Look, Luke May.
Yeah, you know, I would, you know, act like that because I didn't understand yet. But now I understand the bigger picture. Losing this game means nothing if we make the Final Four. Losing this game means nothing if we win the ACC regular season or the ACC tournament. So now that I understand that, I think people come across as to, when they see me, that I'm not mad when we get beat. No, you know me. I take losses as hard as anybody.
You apparently didn't sleep last night, so that's, yeah, I would say so.
You know, I'm not going to start questioning a guy who's been to 9 Final Fours and won 3 national championships. I'm not going to question his methods. I'm not going to question the players that he's brought in because you don't play at the University of North Carolina if you're not good. You know, I'm just throwing that out there.
Right.
You don't get a scholarship to come play here if you're not worthy of a scholarship, whether the NCAA is on the campus or not. And I just think it's, you know, the thing with the fan base and trusting Roy Williams and doing all this stuff, unfortunately, they'll never understand what we have until he's gone. And that really, really sucks. But I think I've come to accept that. Whether it's because they're so mad that he didn't come home in 2000 and they allowed Matt Doherty to do what he did to the program, or whatever it is. They've just made it their mind that no matter what he does, it's not good enough. And we can have the Dean versus Roy argument some other time. I'm with you. I think, you know, he's won more national championships. He's going to eventually have more all-time wins. And I think he'll at least tie him in Final Fours, if not surpass him. If he coaches another 8 years, he only has to get to 2 more to tie him, 3 to pass him.
Right.
You know, if he does all that, there's a legit conversation there. Other than the fact that, yeah, he's already won more national championships in fewer times to the Final Four. And at a time now that there's more parity in college basketball than there was back in the 80s and the 90s when D. Smith was winning his. So it sucks. I try to disengage myself with it because, well, I've spent 4 years arguing with them. The fact of the matter is that, you know, we're a lot the same. I bleed it so much and I love it so much. When I see the stupid stuff on Twitter, I try to educate these people. It doesn't work, but, you know, at the end of the day, we're all Tar Heels. It's not worth arguing with each other, and hopefully one day we'll just understand that we've been blessed to have Dean Smith and Roy Williams coaching the same building, which both their names are on. And we just need to, you know, be grateful for that and understand what they've done is really phenomenal and grateful for what they did for the university.
Could not agree more with that statement.
So, with that, we're gonna shut this thing down. It's late. I'm tired. I know you're tired. You got to go to the work in the morning. I got to sleep until 10:30 before I have to get my day going. So, you know, I do want to thank you for joining me again. Thank you for holding down the fort because you watched the game live on Saturday. I was working. I'm going to go back and put myself through that hell tomorrow afternoon and break it down with my own eyes. And I know Tuesday you'll be there while I'll be again at work. This is killing me, but, you know, man's got to do what a man's got to do to pay his bills. And so I do appreciate your contribution. You're doing a fantastic job. And like I said, thank you for joining me. I want to thank you guys for listening. Always subscribe to Spreaker, iTunes, Spotify, or find us on Facebook and Twitter. Go Tar Heels.